Hi, this is Cicci exploring the Enneagram and inner work. And it came to me that I wanted to share a few things about the heart and the heart center. And the reason for this is that the heart has a very special place in inner growth. And when I say this, it immediately comes to me that, we need the other two centers as well. For one thing, we need the understanding and the discipline of the head center, because without that, why would we do any inner work in the first place? And I mean, obviously, that's true. That we need to be quite motivated, because if we're not, why would we subject ourselves to this sometimes very uncomfortable experiences? So we need the head. And we also obviously need the gut. We need the instinctual center so that we can actually stay in our experience, so that we can be with whatever is happening within, because that's what the inner work is about mostly. And if we didn't have this grounding that the instinctual center provides, we would very likely go off on tangents, left, right, and center, and not really be able to stay in the experience. But the thing is, those two components become quite clear quite soon when we start doing these things. We realize that without this understanding, without some self-discipline, I'm not going to be motivated and do this. And we also realize if we try and do it without the grounding, we realize it's not going to take us anywhere. So we need to be grounded in our bodies for this to work. But what we might not realize, we can do with these two things, with this grounding in place, with understanding in place, we can do inner growth, or attempt to do inner growth, for quite a few years and still not really get anywhere if we don't also realize that the heart has this central position. We need the love, the self-compassion, the compassion for others, the ability to hold space for ourselves in these experiences. And all that comes from the heart. And without those things, we're not going to be able to allow the true changes that we are after in doing this work in the first place. So the heart is a very needed aspect of this work. But the interesting thing about the heart is that it also is quite central in why there is anything to work on in the first place. What is it that happens, likely very early on in our lives, that gives us stuff to work on for inner growth? And the answer to that is the heart has a very, again, central position here, because we come here, we're born with not a complete personality, or even very much of a personality at all, and not really a cognitive mind or anything, but we're born with just this awareness of essence and of one essential quality in particular. And this is even before we start forming relationships, before there is even someone to form a relationship here, before I have an experience of myself as a separate person. I have the experience of myself in this essential cloud, if you will. And the thing is, it's not easy. When you get born, you come into the world, you're with other human beings, it's not easy to stay in the awareness of this essential nature. It's actually impossible to do so, because we're wired to develop egos. The ego is not a bad thing. The ego is necessary to live here on earth. We need to develop an ego when we grow up. Ego formation is a part of our development as human beings. But as we do this, we increasingly and quite soon lose this connection to essence, this connection to especially this quality that we, in our particular Enneagram type, have a quite strong, it's a strong but vague memory of. It's like if I'm an 8, I have this somewhere in the back of my experience is this memory of life force, of just this sheer initiating power. And say if I'm a 3, the same vague memory is about worth, self-worth, innate worth, brilliance. And again, this is not conscious usually. It's not very clear what I'm after, but there is something there that wants to go and get this, because there is something there I want to reclaim. Only by that time, that wants to reclaim this is unfortunately the ego. And the ego goes about amending this loss through creating a passion. Like Russ Hudson talks about the heart wounds, and the heart wounds for each type, they are what happens with the loss of essential contact, if you will. Because the essence qualities feed the heart. They nurture the heart. The heart has no sustenance, really, without the essential qualities or without the connection with them. So what the ego rushes in to do is compensate for that. So I try to do, through the passion, I try to do life force. And voila, we have lust for the 8, etc. for all the types, because the ego tries to emulate this essential quality, and the ego is never going to, be able to do that, because ego and essence are like oil and water. They don't really mix, but it tries, and then the whole personality circus starts. We get strategies, we develop fixations. All that is from this loss of essential contact and the wound that this creates in the heart, metaphorically. So the question then becomes, how do I work on this? Because if our ego is of the kind that has become interested in inner work, then we want to do something about this, because it sounds really yummy to have this essential contact. Also, it sounds good, So both from the egoic perspective and from a truer perspective, we're longing for this to be righted again, for the communication or the contact with the essential quality to clear up. But the ego, looking, or even whoever part of us, are looking for ways to do this. We will find, if you look at the Enneagram, we will find the heart point or the point of integration on the Enneagram, which for the 8 again is going to be the 2, and for the 3 it's going to be the 6, and so on and so forth. And we might believe that if I start acting like this other type, then I'll be on the way to recreating this essential quality that I'm after. More or less consciously is this reasoning. And we won't. It doesn't work that way. And we might spot the descriptions of the virtues for all the types and say, wow, this virtue for my type, if I develop that, if I really focus on developing, whatever virtue, innocence for the 8 again, then I will attain to this height, or if it's not very much from the ego perspective, but more from the true heart perspective, is that then I will be home again. I will be fed again, finally. But so the tendency for anyone living in this world will be to think, oh, work on those. But then this clever man called Cicci Jung once commented that we don't become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. And he also added the latter procedure, however, is popular. So, and no, it isn't. The ego tries in every other way to accomplish this. Every other way but actually making the darkness conscious. And still we might say, yeah, I'm prepared to make the darkness conscious. Where is the darkness? Show me, where do I look? And the thing is, while we can make lists, of course, and we can do workshops and we can look at our shadows and all that stuff, we can't really just go inside and illuminate the darkness, the spots that need fixing, as it were, because we don't know what those spots are. And fixing, by the way, also is not going to happen the way we think it will. So we need to do something else first. We need to do something by which the darkness will be made conscious without even first being labeled a darkness. And this that we need to do is simply we need to get on a first name basis with our own heart. We need to get to know our own heart. Because usually we don't. We know a lot of images and images of self, images of others, images of the world. We know a lot of stuff that we have put on top of the heart, as it were, but we don't really know the heart. And we can't even, go inside, lift that stuff away and look at the true heart, because it doesn't work that way either. What we need to do is we need to go inside, meet whatever pile of rubbish is there, whatever glimpses of something else that we can see, and just say welcome. We just need to be with all those things. And the first thing we need to do is stop rejecting parts of ourselves for not fitting in our, vision of how we should be, our self-concepts. So this means exploring the heart on its own terms. It means just hanging about in the heart. And we can do this by finding fellow travelers, do it together, because doing it together is a really good thing. Being together with others exploring this will help us. So if you want to explore this together with others, you're very welcome to a workshop that I created for this particular purpose. And we're going to just spend 3 hours exploring the heart centers together, doing exercises. It's not primarily a teaching workshop, it's more about experiential exercises and feedback and, open exploration. But if this appeals to you, please check out the landing page, which is in the comments. And if you have any questions whatsoever, please look me up on Facebook or email or whatever, also in the comments, and just, see what we can come up with, because this is going to be a sweet day. Thanks for listening.